Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block in today's segment of First Home Alliance. I'm your host, Larry Laws, and I'm here to share with you the amazing things that First Home Alliance is doing in the community. I hope to empower you with knowledge that will enhance your financial fitness and answer questions you may have about housing to make your dream of homeownership a success. On today's episode, we will talk about community service. Our special guest today has been an integral part of our organization while serving on our board for the past 3 years. He has over 30 years of program experience, that's program management experience. He has worked in the areas of nonprofit, small business development, and real estate in both the federal government and private sector. He's a retired U.S. Army Reserve Field Grade Officer. He's a federal employee at this time, but soon to retire from that job as well, which will give him more time to serve the community. Please welcome to our show, First Home Alliance Board of Directors, Chairman Donald Scoggins.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Donald, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes, and I know that I spoke to you, probably a year ago when we started, that you and the other board of directors, I would like to invite you here to the show.
Correct.
And so today is your opportunity to share with our audience, your plight, flight as the board chair. So before we get started with the questions in the interview, what do it feel like preparing for retirement?
Well, preparing for retirement is sort of a mixed emotion. On one end, you're glad that you'll be free to do some of the things you want to do, and then on the other end, you realize that when the word retirement comes in, you realize that maybe your time on this earth is not as long as you thought it would be. I never thought that retirement never really was in my lexicon, but even though I will no longer be at a full-time job, I will be serving and working as hard as I can. I plan on being still engaged and doing things that I like, serving, helping people, and helping organizations.
Yes. Well, I know what you have done for First Home Alliance. It may sometimes seem like a job, but it's actually a service that you have provided. I really commend you for that. And how did you find out about the opportunity to serve on a board?
On a board or First Home Alliance?
A board, a community board.
Okay, well, I found out that serving on a board comes from, at first, just volunteering at an organization. There are many organizations that are always looking for good board members, and the best way to find a board member is a potential board member is someone who will volunteer, I would say, consistently, and they show commitment with the organization that they're working with.
Yes.
And that's how many times I wind up I'm kind of like a person who can't say no. Because many people always say they're looking for someone on the board, and they say, oh, well, have you thought about being on this board? But I found out that in the later years, I'm just sort of pared down to maybe three or four organizations that I've been very active with in terms of being on the office of the board, their board. So.
Yes. Well, looking at your history and the things that I know about, you have served in the community for quite some time. And so it's not just with First Home Alliance.
Right.
You have served some other boards in as well. And so I know that there was a process. Maybe you was doing research to figure out what organizations that you wanted to serve. How did you come across First Home Alliance, and how was that a good match for you?
Well, First Home Alliance, I'll tell you what, I was working with one organization, and we were getting ready to put a panel together. It was a forum on foreclosures and the plight that was taking place in Prince William County several years ago. We had quite a rash of foreclosures and people losing their homes and all, and it was, the housing crisis, mortgage crisis. So I contacted an official with the Prince William County Housing Department, and I was asked for someone. I said, I didn't know anyone I was searching out, and so your name, the gentleman, referred me to you. And then when he referred me to you, after I saw it and thought about it more, I think I've met you before he even referred me to you, because you were they had the Dale City Parade, and I think you had a little booth. Your building was right next to Comcast over there.
Correct.
And then everything sort of came together, you know.
Yes, yes. Okay. And so our organization,
Right.
First Home Alliance, our mission is to increase and sustain home ownership.
Right.
And so that seemed to be a good fit, for what you wanted to do.
Right.
And so what drew you to working with an organization that did financial literacy or housing? What drew you to that?
What drew me to that was having been a real estate broker for over 25 years, I found out that many times people, they get into a house, and then once they get in the house, they sometimes forget that you have to worry about keeping the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out that many people who are really would make good homeowners, they may not necessarily be good at their personal finances, and they have to remember that when you're a renter, you can sometimes skip paying your rent, and most of my involvement in this area was in Washington D.C., and they tend to be a little, how should I put it, more protective of the tenants. So the tenants can go 1 or 2 or 3 months without paying their rent, and nothing happens pretty much other than maybe getting evicted,
Yes.
which could take a year or two. When you are a homeowner, you don't pay your rent, you don't pay your mortgage, then you wind up getting foreclosed on, and everything that you work towards, and nice furniture and nice home and everything, you can lose that, And I hate seeing people lose their house, because your home is the base. I think a house is the basics, and shelter is the basics for everyone having a good life. Once you have a good home, I think everything else kind of falls into place.
Yes, and having that, that attachment to housing and shelter. We didn't go through your whole resume. I mean, you have a very lengthy resume, and I understand that you were a broker
Right.
at one time. And so, what did you do as a real estate broker?
Okay, what happened was I kind of got into it in happenstance, because at first, when I came out of the military, I said I was always a person didn't want to pay rent to somebody. So I said, what I'm going to do is pay rent for 1 year until I learn the area, so I know where I want to buy, and then at the end of that 1 year, I want to be in a house that's mine. So since I was single at the time and didn't need a house, so to speak, I bought in D.C. I bought a 4-unit apartment building. I lived in 1 unit and rented the other 3 units out. And at the time, I was working in the district government as a urban planner, and bought 1 4-unit building. And then as soon as I bought 1 4-unit building, I didn't realize it, but the neighborhood was going down at the time. But to me, the properties were easy to buy, because I guess nobody else wanted to buy them. So I bought them. And so I bought 1, and the next thing you know, I bought 2, and then I bought 3. So I was beginning to buy these 4-unit buildings, and they, being single, I enjoyed collecting rent and deal with it, And then it got to the point where I had more property than than I had. I couldn't go into my regular job. Was almost like an extracurricular activity. I had to find time to go to the regular job.
Yes.
And so I enjoyed it. But let me make a long story short. I really enjoyed it, and I found out that many people who are good tenants can also be good homeowners.
Yes. Don, I want to know, what is the time requirement in reference to serving on the board?
Well, at First Home Alliance, we would like to have board members serve at least perhaps 5 hours per month, which is not a lot of time. They can do that any way that's helpful. They can come in the office and do a little volunteering, or they can go to other events of other organizations representing First Home Alliance, or they can just, we have telephone calls, and sometimes we have meetings and things, and they can do it that way.
Yeah, and so you've been doing it for the last 3 years.
Right.
And so if someone that was interested in being a board member, and so maybe they would just ask you, what is your time, and how much time that you spend in reference to the organization in a period of a month?
I would say give between 5 to 10 hours if you want to do that on average. Some months it may be more and maybe less, but on average between 5 and 10 hours.
And so what a person is motivated to give up that time, you know, that's 5 hours or 10 hours a month, you know, and we talked about a lot of things in reference to your history and why you're motivated to do that. But do you get paid for serving on the board?
No, not. That's one thing about most nonprofit organizations. The board members are serving no compensation. The only compensation the only income we get is psychological income because we enjoy what we're doing and we're committed.
Yes, and so and you did mention the commitment that you had in reference to some of the past that you had as a real estate broker, and also the interest in helping people in the community becoming homeowners, maintaining homeownership and shelter, and you also mentioned about the foreclosure issue that we had in our county. What if different people serve and they have a reason for serving, but I consider it a why, and we each individual have a why. And so what would be your why for serving that community service, serving on the board?
Well, my why comes from the fact that over many years, having seen people in various circumstances, some of their own and some by accident, and I think that I've been pretty blessed in my life, and I think that information that I've learned how in certain situations that, I've made some mistakes along the way, and I would like to share some of my mistakes with other folks so that they don't make the same mistakes, and I just feel that if you've been,
well, that is great. And we're going to touch more on that about some of your past and some of your history right after our break. We're coming up on the break, but before we go, I would like to remind you that First Home Alliance is a HUD-approved housing counseling agency serving the National Capital Area. If you are a first-time home buyer, a homeowner struggling to make mortgage payments, or someone just seeking financial management training, I encourage you to check the USDA, United States Department of Housing and Urban Development website for a HUD-approved agency in your area. We will be right back after the break. Stay tuned.
Every third Sunday of each month. We will be right back after the break with more on financial.
Welcome back. You're watching Watch Your Block, and today's segment of First Home Alliance with our special guest, Don Scoggins. Don, before the break, I said we would get back to a little bit. I said your history, our past, and things of that sort. What I really meant sharing a little bit more about you and your dedication to service. I understand that you are a field grade officer in the United States Army Reserve.
Correct.
And so tell us a little bit about that transition from the reserve duty to your federal job that you're working now.
Well, when I was in the Army Reserve, that was basically you do that like 1 weekend a month. So it was done in such a way that there really was no transition from the federal job. I mean, from that into the federal job. It was more of a transition, the biggest transition was from being a self-employed entrepreneur into the federal government. That was probably about the biggest.
Okay. And so maybe you was, it sounded like maybe you was doing the your entrepreneur venture
Right.
in the Federal Reserve, I mean U.S. Army Reserve.
While I was in the reserve,
In the
but that was
reserve.
just 1 week in a month.
Yes,
So-
and then you transition from that to a federal, as a federal employee.
Right.
Yes.
More or less, yeah.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you for your service
Thank you.
and for serving in the armed forces.
Vietnam,
Yes, and I understand that with First Home Alliance, you have actually led, the organization and to continue to support some of the initiatives of the organization and working with our chamber.
Right.
And so, could you talk about some of the events that you have attended, or?
Okay, well, the chamber has what they call a Veterans Council. So I've attended several of those meetings, and I plan to have more time to go to more of the meetings. They have what they call a legislative session, where they have people from the Virginia General Assembly will come and give what they call a legislative update, what they plan to try to implement during the course of the year. Each General Assembly member or delegate, they usually have about 5 or 6 bills they like to propose. And if they can get 1 or 2 of them passed, that's considered an achievement. So they usually come, and it's usually the area delegates, those that cover Prince William County, are the ones that usually participate in this legislative update.
Okay. Yes, and so with Prince William County, I see that you have attended a few of those events. With that, there was I think it's called the VA Leadership Institute, and so I understand you received an award some years ago. Could you tell us about that?
It's called the Virginia Leadership Institute. What it is, the Virginia Leadership Institute was founded about 10 years ago by a young lady who worked on the Hill, and she also, I believe she was a lobbyist, I understand, and she saw there was a great need to try to get more African Americans involved in elective politics. And there was one of the impediments towards that was the fact that many of us do not know how to run for an office. It seemed to be such an uphill battle, because it's almost like the system is stacked against you. But in many cases it is, and in some cases it's not. But if you have knowledge, knowledge is power. So what she did was, by creating the Virginia Leadership Institute, is put on sessions and bring speakers in and talk to people who are interested in running for public office. And I guess with my long time of being involved in local politics, and that I was one of the recipient of what they call the Trailblazer
Okay.
Award.
And with that was a few years ago. I
That was a few
understand
years
you
ago,
received the
right.
Trailblazer Award, and now you're actually participating in a program now.
Right.
And tell us a little bit.
Well,
about
right
that.
now I'm participating. Well, I'm a graduate of one school called the Sorensen Institute, which is a part of University of Virginia. They have what they call a candidate school, and then they have a leadership institute. And I was a part of the candidate school about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But right now I'm an attendee of a class called Leadership Prince William, which is geared mainly towards Prince William County, and gives you sort of a diagnostic understanding of everything that's involved in the county, from the parks and recreation, how the county is organized. You get to see some things that you may not have known about in the county, such as some of the historical sites, and so that's another thing I'm involved. That's only one day a month for about 10 months that you're involved in that.
Okay, and that's great that with your interests and inspiration in reference to what you want to do in progressing, whether that's in your job or just general interest, but it also comes together with what you do within the nonprofit. And so, with that, do you represent the nonprofit at the events?
Yeah, well, I'm there I'm there as a volunteer from First Home Alliance, and that's the good thing about, I would say, that organization, is that you make contacts with many people who are involved in many nonprofits, and you find out that the common thread that runs through everyone is the fact that they get a great amount of fulfillment by serving other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how with your association with basically being a veteran, whether you want to call it an affiliate or you want to call it a life membership, but you're a veteran,
right.
And so how is that, and that you can actually work with that and combine the nonprofit mission with that and help pursue some of those things in the community that support veterans?
Well, I found that, especially in the more recent years, there's been a great emphasis on helping veterans who are returning from the recent wars we had, because many of them come back with certain either medical or psychological problems, and I think the community very much wants to help veterans. And one of the biggest challenges we have, unfortunately, many veterans find themselves being homeless for various reasons, and since that's a part of housing, that kind of ties into my interest in housing. I've always been interested in houses.
Okay. Yes. And so attending these events,
Right.
and I understand you work with the chamber. You have the opportunity to meet elected officials. Have you also worked with some of the local government agencies, such as the Office of Housing?
Yeah,
in
the Office
Prince
of
William County?
Housing, we've met those people because every year they have what they call a housing workshop, where they talk about how you can perhaps make application for grants through the CBDG program, whatever. And so you meet people, and I think it's important because when you, with a nonprofit organization, you're always looking for sources of funding, because I guess you can say that's a perennial challenge for nonprofits, is having adequate funding.
Correct.
And many times the funding is distributed by the local government from the federal government. So it's very important to have that contact. I know who to go to.
Yes, and being a board member, advocate out there, not only watching out for the governance of the organization, is actually looking, making sure that they have proper funding and setting a plan for that funding plan. Now, you mentioned local governments, and of course we know that we're a HUD-approved organization. Not only we go for federal, state, and local funding, but what about the corporate partners? Yes.
Well, the corporate partners is very important also, because especially, I would say, in light of the recent challenge we had in Prince William County, so we've been able to go to some lending institutions that want to correct some of the problems that existed with the mortgage crisis. So we've been able to get funding from several relatively large lending institutions to help us, and we've also met people on their staff who coordinate that. So that was been a good.
Yes, yeah, and it's great being a advocacy arm for the nonprofit and actually building those relationships with the corporate and foundations. But also we have some other active advocacy groups in the community that you have actually worked with. And what about some of the events that you have participated in in reference to helping the organization move forward with that?
There are several organizations that do things that maybe that First Home Alliance doesn't do, in terms of providing shelter, providing food, providing clothing. And so these are organizations we've had some contact with, just to let them know about First Home Alliance, because sometimes people who, for whatever reason, they may go to those organizations for the kind of services that actually can be provided by First Home Alliance. And by those organizations knowing about First Home Alliance, that helps us also, what we have to do with.
Okay. Well, we're about to close. We're nearing the close of this interview here, and but before we go, I want to make sure that I want to say thanks to you, Don, for coming on, and I want to say thanks for your service to First Home Alliance and the community in your service.
Okay.
And so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. Our guest today shared the amazing things he's doing in the community and the significant role he served that enable First Home Alliance to perform its mission. He talked about his motivation and dedication to serving his community and making it a better place for all. If you have questions for our chairman, Don Scoggins, his contact information is provided below. If you have the desire to lend a hand to your community, please do so, for whatever your reason may be. Check local nonprofits, faith-based, civic, and community organizations in your area and get involved. Now it's time to check out our inbox. This is where we share a recent question sent to us from our viewing audience in reference to housing and financial education. Today's question comes from Manassas, Virginia. The question is, where can I find a real estate agent? This is a question that is often asked to our organization. Where do I find a real estate agent? How do I find a real estate agent? Of course, you can Google and find a real estate agent, but that is not the recommended way. Well, to find a real estate agent, I would ask that you ask for a reference. But prior to that reference, I would like to ask you to be prepared for homeownership, to have a pre-qualification, knowing how much house that you can afford before actually going out to shop. And so one is seek the services of a lender, but first off is seek education, and the education through a HUD-approved housing counseling agency where that you can get the home buyer education prior to your pursuit of home ownership. In closing, if you have questions concerning financial education or home ownership, email our inbox at help@firsthomealliance.org and tune into our next show to see if your question was selected to be shared with our audience. If you want to find out more about our services, please visit our website. Thank you for watching Rock Your Block and today's segment of First Home Alliance. I am Larry Laws, reminding you that we're here to empower you with the knowledge to help you successfully live the dream of homeownership and financial fitness.